back to Shira's Story Corner. Today we have a special guest, and her name is Michelle Bossy, and she is going to read Blast Off to the Moon.
That's right. I'm Michelle, and I'm going to read Dr. Wonderful and Her Dog Blast Off to the Moon by Gunderson, illustrated by Valerio Fabretti. And Gunderson is a playwright and a friend of mine, so that's why I chose the book for you. One very normal Tuesday, Dr. Wonderful came home from school with two things on her mind. One, her little dog Newton. Two, a question she couldn't wait to answer. Dr. Wonderful loved asking big questions, and answering them felt like solving great mysteries. So she sprang onto her bed, sending Newton for a loop, and asked, "Why does the moon shrink?" "What do you mean the moon shrinks?" Newton asked. "For the past week I've noticed that the moon is getting smaller," Dr. Wonderful said, pointing to the moon's white crescent. "But a week ago it was getting bigger. Every month it shrinks down to a sliver and disappears before it grows back to a ball. What I don't know is why." The moon is so far away, Dr. Wonderful thought. How are we going to solve our mystery? Newton licked her face, trying to be helpful. Dr. Wonderful's eyes went wide as she got an idea. "We can go to the moon in the Space-tastic Mindmobile." "I call front seat," Newton said. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff! They soared away from Earth and headed straight for the moon. As they got closer and closer, the moon got bigger and brighter. "Where do they plug it in?" Newton asked. "They don't, but it is bright. I wonder if the moon makes its own light like the sun or reflects light like a mirror," Dr. Wonderful said. Then she noticed that the closer their spaceship got to the moon, the larger its shadow became. "Aha! If we can see our shadow, it must mean that the moon doesn't make light like a star. It reflects the light coming from the sun. Back on Earth, the moon looked like a crescent, but now I see that the crescent is part of a big ball," Newton said, getting excited. Anything that looked like a ball reminded him of his favorite game, fetch. "You're right," Dr. Wonderful said, and started a list of clues that might help her understand why the moon shrinks. 1. The moon reflects light. 2. From Earth, the moon looks like a crescent. 3. But the moon is actually a ball. Newton couldn't resist chasing and chewing his very own ball, which floated around the spaceship weightlessly. Watching Newton circle around his ball reminded Dr. Wonderful that the moon circles around or orbits the Earth. She added to her list of clues. 4. Moon orbits Earth every month. 5. Tell Mom I need a bigger telescope. Dr. Wonderful did what she always did when she got closer to answering a big question. "Think, think, think," she said as the spaceship went sink, sink, sink to the surface of the moon. When they stepped out of their spaceship and looked around at the strange gray ground, all they could say was, "Whoa." Things were very different on the moon than on Earth. It was so bright, Dr. Wonderful had to wear moon glasses. And instead of walking, they bounced around like old balloons. Each step lifted them up higher and set them down slower than on Earth. "Wahoo!" Newton said, jumping off the ground and twirling, twisting, tumbling before touching back down. Then they spotted the most amazing thing they'd ever seen. Earth. They waved to everyone back on their beautiful planet. During a quick break to play the coolest game of fetch in the universe, Dr. Wonderful noticed that the crescent-shaped shadow on Newton's ball made it look kind of like the moon. "Interesting," Dr. Wonderful said, pocketing the ball and adding a clue. 6. Shadow makes ball look like crescent. "Come on, Newton," she said. "I think we're close to solving this moon mystery." As they bounced along, Dr. Wonderful noticed that her shadow was getting longer in front of her as the sun was getting lower behind her. She added to her list of moon clues. 7. Shadows lengthen as the sun sets behind us. Then they walked into complete darkness. The sun couldn't reach them. It feels like we're in one big shadow, Dr. Wonderful thought. She ran back to the bright side of the moon and scribbled down more clues. 8. The moon has a dark side and a light side. 9. Light side is sunny. 10. Dark side is in shadow. That's it, Dr. Wonderful said, standing right in the middle of dark and light. The moon doesn't actually shrink. It just looks like it does because of its shadow. How does a shadow make something shrink? Newton asked. Only half of the moon is lit by the sun, while the other part is in shadow, Dr. Wonderful said. On Earth, we can't see the part of the moon in shadow. So as the moon orbits the Earth, we see different parts of the shadow, and it looks like the moon is growing and shrinking. Think of the moon as this ball, and the sun is my flashlight. If the side of the moon facing you is lit by the sun, you can see the whole bright ball, a full moon, right? But if the side of the moon you see is only partly lit by the sun, you'll only see part of the ball or a crescent. And if there is no light on the side of the moon facing Earth, you'll see, well, you won't see anything. So the moon is always there even if you can't see it, Newton asked. Right, Dr. Wonderful said, and gave Newton a big moon hug. With their mystery finally solved, they played one last game of bouncy moon tag before heading home. That night, as Newton snoozed in the moonlight, Dr. Wonderful fell asleep thinking, I wonder what mystery we'll solve tomorrow. Dr. Wonderful's lunar fun facts. The moon is 238,900 miles from Earth. The sun is the only star in our solar system. It shines a light on every object in the solar system. Meteorites are rocks flying through space that hit the surface of a planet or a moon. Craters are the dents and dips in the moon made when meteorites collided with it long ago. What else do you want? The moon is made of rock. The moon is a quarter as wide as the Earth, and you could fit 64 moons on the Earth. Lunar phases are what scientists call the changes we see on the moon during the course of a month. When the moon is fully lit by the sun, it's called a full moon. When the side of the moon covered in shadow is facing the Earth, and we can't see it all, it's called a new moon.
The end. Now, thank you, Michelle, for being our guest on Shira Story Corner.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, let me read a silly joke for silly kids by Silly Ray. Okay. Why did the cookie go to the hospital? He felt crummy. The end. See you next time on Shira Story Corner. Bye.
Bye.